You keep socializing like it's survival, but it's exposure. Every smile you offer lowers your rank, and every connection you chase tightens the leash around your neck. You were trained to believe socializing is survival. From childhood, the message was repeated like doctrine. Make friends, be friendly, stay connected, network, don't isolate yourself. It sounded harmless, healthy, even, but underneath that conditioning was a more useful outcome for everyone except you. A social man is easier to read. A readable man is easier to predict. A predictable man is easier to control. You were not taught to socialize for strength. You were taught to socialize for compliance. Belonging feels like power because it reduces anxiety. But reduced anxiety is not dominance, it is sedation. When you sit in a circle laughing, trading stories, exposing preferences, confessing frustrations, you are not rising. You are revealing your psychological blueprint. Every opinion you share narrows your range. Every emotional reaction you display gives someone your trigger map. Every personal detail you volunteer becomes leverage. You think conversation builds connection. It actually builds a file. Modern culture worships extroversion because extroverts leak information. They display their fears in jokes, their insecurities in tone shifts, their ambitions in careless bragging. They advertise their hierarchy hunger without realizing it. And hierarchy is always present. Even in a casual group of men at a cafe, the ranking is happening silently. Who speaks the most? Who interrupts? Who gets laughed at? Who gets deferred to? Who explains? Who seeks approval? Social spaces are not neutral. They are arenas. The mistake you make is assuming the arena is friendly. When you try to socialize more, what you are really doing is increasing your exposure time inside competitive territory. You are giving more chances to be measured, categorized, and mentally boxed. The man who talks the most becomes the most defined. The most defined becomes the most limited. Mystery holds power because it leaves others guessing. Guessing creates psychological tension. Tension elevates perceived value. But you were trained to relieve tension, to make others comfortable. Comfortable men are non-threatening. Non-threatening men are never sovereign. Look at how you behave when entering a room. Your instinct is to signal safety, smile slightly, nod, greet, initiate light talk. You are communicating, I am cooperative. I am not a threat. I seek inclusion. In evolutionary terms, that is submission signaling. You have confused likability with leverage. A man obsessed with being liked automatically places himself beneath the judgment of others. If you need their approval, they outrank you. Power always sits with the one who does not need validation. Socializing, as you practice it, is usually a subtle audition. You laugh when something isn't funny. You soften your opinions to avoid friction. You reveal vulnerabilities too early to appear authentic. You mirror personalities to fit the room. You call it adaptability. It is actually dilution. Every time you adjust yourself for acceptance, you fracture your internal authority. And people sense that fracture. Humans are hyper-attuned to dominance cues. The man who bends energetically gets categorized instantly. The irony is brutal. The more you attempt to increase connection, the less solid you appear. Strength is not demonstrated through frequency of interaction. It is demonstrated through controlled interaction. Scarcity creates weight. Silence creates gravity. Selective speech creates authority. But silence feels dangerous to you because you were conditioned to fear exclusion. The child in you equates quiet with rejection, so you overcompensate with presence. You over-explain. You overshare. You over-participate. And in doing so, you bleed status. Watch powerful men closely. Not influencers. Not entertainers. Real power, executives, strategists, decision-makers. They do not fill silence. They allow it to stretch. They let others lean forward. They reveal information only when it serves positioning. They understand something you were never taught. Visibility invites challenge. The more visible you are socially, the more you enter comparison cycles. Comparison fuels competition. Competition invites subtle attacks, jokes, tests, dismissals, status probing. You think people are bonding. Often, they are measuring. And when you voluntarily step into every social setting seeking stimulation, you are volunteering for assessment. There is a reason predators move quietly. Noise attracts hunters as much as it attracts attention. You were taught that isolation is weakness, that being alone signals failure, that a man without a circle is incomplete. But circles create obligations. Obligations create compromises. Compromises reduce sovereignty. The socially addicted man cannot say no easily. He fears losing position. The sovereign man can walk away without emotional withdrawal symptoms. That is the difference. You don't socialize because you are strong. You socialize because you fear invisibility. But invisibility, when chosen, is insulation. It protects your plans. It protects your leverage. It protects your internal calibration. The world does not reward the most connected man. It rewards the most controlled man. And control begins with limiting access. If you continue to equate constant interaction with value, you will remain transparent. And transparent men are easy to maneuver. The first shift is simple but uncomfortable. Stop performing availability. Let silence exist. Let others reveal themselves first. Let conversations happen without your contribution. Observe who becomes restless when you withdraw energy. Observe who tries to pull you back into noise. That reaction tells you exactly how much of your value was based on entertainment rather than authority. This chapter was not about becoming antisocial. It was about breaking the lie that social exposure equals power. It does not. Power is not in how many rooms you enter. Power is in how little of yourself you leave behind in them. You don't socialize for connection. You socialize for approval. And approval is a chemical reward. Every time someone laughs at your joke, agrees with your opinion, nods at your story, your brain releases dopamine. A small hit, a subtle high. You interpret it as acceptance, but biologically, it is reinforcement. You are being trained. Approval is not neutral. It conditions repetition. The brain wires itself around rewarded behavior. If speaking more gets validation, you speak more. If oversharing gets sympathy, you overshare again. If self-deprecation gets laughs, you reduce yourself repeatedly. Soon, your personality is no longer authentic. It is optimized for applause. This is how approval addiction forms, not dramatically, but gradually. Micro-rewards shaping micro-adjustments. Over time, those adjustments become identity. You start scanning faces while speaking. You measure reactions mid-sentence. You soften statements to maintain positive feedback. You are no longer expressing. You are calibrating for acceptance. That calibration kills dominance. Dominance requires indifference to approval, not hostility, not arrogance, indifference. The moment you need the room's emotional validation, you surrender positional power to it, because now the room decides your worth. Watch what happens in group settings. A man says something bold. Silence follows. If he is addicted to approval, he immediately retracts. Maybe I'm wrong. That retreat is visible weakness. Not because he was wrong, but because he couldn't tolerate social tension. Approval addicts cannot withstand silence. Silence feels like rejection. Rejection feels like danger. So they rush to repair it. They laugh. They clarify. They over-explain. And every repair attempt lowers their rank. Powerful men let silence sit. If a statement lands heavily, they allow others to process it. They do not beg for reassurance. They do not cushion their stance. They let tension do the work. Approval addicts, however, fear tension more than they value authority. Understand the mechanism clearly. Validation gives dopamine, gives reinforcement, gives behavioral pattern, gives identity. Once this loop stabilizes, you are predictable. Predictable men are easy to manipulate. If someone knows you crave approval, they can control you with minimal signals. A slight withdrawal of warmth, and you adjust. A raised eyebrow, and you soften. A subtle exclusion, and you chase inclusion. This is how social hierarchies quietly form. The least approval-dependent man naturally rises, not because he demands power, but because he does not bend under emotional pressure. Others sense stability. Stability signals strength. Approval addicts radiate instability. Their mood shifts based on reception. Praise elevates them. Criticism destabilizes them. Indifference unsettles them. That volatility exposes leverage points, and leverage invites control. This is why charismatic manipulators thrive in social ecosystems. They intuitively identify who is hungry for validation. They reward selectively. They withdraw strategically. They create emotional dependency. The addicted man never notices. He simply feels drawn, because what he calls chemistry is often intermittent reinforcement. Approval addiction also distorts risk perception. You avoid necessary conflict to preserve likability. You tolerate disrespect disguised as jokes. You hesitate to assert boundaries because confrontation might reduce acceptance. You choose comfort over positioning, short-term harmony over long-term authority, and slowly, your internal authority erodes. You begin to define yourself through reflection, how others react, respond, approve. Without external mirrors, you feel uncertain. That uncertainty drives more social exposure. The cycle tightens. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If isolation makes you anxious, you are approval dependent. A sovereign man can sit alone without psychological withdrawal. He does not require constant affirmation to feel stable. His internal evaluation system is self-contained. Approval addicts outsource evaluation. They ask the room, was that good? Was that funny? Am I respected? Power never asks those questions. Power observes. When you detach from approval seeking, something interesting happens. Conversations slow down. Words become deliberate. You no longer speak to fill space. You speak when strategic. Your presence shifts because attention no longer leaks outward. Most men think confidence means speaking boldly. It does not. Confidence means not adjusting yourself in real time to maintain comfort. The addicted man edits mid-sentence. The sovereign man speaks once. You must see approval addiction for what it is, a leash disguised as connection. It keeps you socially active but hierarchically constrained. The cure is not rudeness. It is emotional neutrality toward reception. Say what needs to be said. Let it land. Do not chase applause. Do not repair silence. The moment you stop seeking validation, you become harder to steer. And once you are hard to steer, you become harder to rank. Approval addiction is subtle slavery. Break it, and your social presence becomes unpredictable. Unpredictability creates tension. Tension creates respect. Not all men in the room are equal. Some are hunting. Social environments are ecosystems. And like any ecosystem, there are roles, predators, scavengers, performers, parasites. If you walk in unaware, you become prey by default. Most men think social interaction is mutual exchange. It isn't, it's positioning. And positioning reveals archetypes. The first is the climber. He scans constantly. Who has influence? Who gets attention? Who commands silence? His laughter is directional. His loyalty is temporary. He attaches upward, never sideways. Around power, he becomes agreeable. Around weakness, he becomes dismissive. The climber does not care about connection. He cares about proximity to status. If you are approval dependent, he will sense it instantly. He will validate you just enough to keep you useful. Then he will step over you the moment someone higher ranked enters the room. The second is the pleaser. This man survives through accommodation. He avoids friction like disease. He agrees before he thinks. He offers help before he is asked. He confuses being needed with being respected. Pleasers are dangerous to themselves. They leak energy constantly. They overcommit. They apologize reflexively. And because they fear rejection, they tolerate subtle disrespect. Hierarchy places them low, not because they lack skill, but because they lack boundaries. The third is the entertainer. He dominates through noise, jokes, stories, volume. He keeps attention circulating around him so silence never exposes insecurity. Entertainers can appear high status temporarily because attention feels like power, but attention is unstable. The moment the room quiets, the entertainer feels naked. Without reaction, he has no footing. His dominance depends on stimulation. Remove the stimulus, and his authority collapses. Then there is the confessor. He builds false intimacy fast, shares personal struggles early, reveals weaknesses in the name of authenticity. He believes vulnerability guarantees loyalty. It does not. Early exposure reduces mystery. Reduced mystery lowers perceived value. The confessor creates emotional debt where none was requested, and often regrets it later when information travels. All of these archetypes share one flaw. They reveal themselves too quickly, and revelation determines rank. Now understand something critical. Predators do not look aggressive. They look attentive. The true social predator is the observer, the man who speaks last, the man who asks questions without answering many, the man whose reactions are minimal but whose memory is sharp. He collects data. Who interrupts whom? Who laughs too quickly? Who shifts tone when authority enters? Who seeks validation after speaking? He studies pressure points, because once he understands your hunger, approval, attention, inclusion, elevation, he can feed it strategically. And once he can feed it, he can guide you. Social parasites survive by attaching to emotional needs. If you need validation, they provide it selectively. If you crave status, they offer proximity. If you fear exclusion, they threaten distance subtly. You will call it friendship. It is leverage. The brutal truth is this: most men in social settings are negotiating ranks subconsciously. Tone, posture, eye contact, speaking order, these are signals, and signals determine placement. When you enter trying to be liked, you signal negotiation from below. When you enter observing, withholding, calibrating, you signal evaluation. Evaluation places you above negotiation. The mistake naive men make is assuming kindness protects them. It does not. It categorizes them. If you are excessively agreeable, you are safe. If you are safe, you are non-threatening. If you are non-threatening, you are rarely prioritized. This does not mean hostility. It means controlled unpredictability. A sovereign man does not rush to fill roles. He does not perform climber behavior. He does not default to pleaser. He does not depend on entertainer tactics. He does not overexpose like the confessor. He remains undefined longer than others are comfortable with. And discomfort shifts power, because the one who is least readable forces others to reveal more in compensation. The ecosystem does not reward the loudest. It rewards the most strategically opaque. Identify the archetypes around you. Then identify which one you unconsciously play, because until you step outside the role, you are participating in a game you do not control. History does not remember the loudest men. It remembers the decisive ones. And decisiveness rarely announces itself. You have been conditioned to equate visibility with importance. Social media reinforced it. Modern culture worships exposure. The man who is seen often is assumed to matter. But in older systems of power, visibility was risk. In royal courts, the loud advisor did not last long. The one who displayed ambition openly became a threat, and threats were removed quietly. The men who survived were controlled, measured, economical with words. Power structures are allergic to unpredictably emotional individuals. They prefer stable, unreadable minds. The man who reacts visibly reveals his pressure points, and once pressure points are known, pressure can be applied. Look at empires. Look at courts. Look at military command. The general who panics publicly loses troops. The strategist who reveals the full plan loses leverage. The ruler who seeks constant validation loses fear. Fear, respect, authority, these are not built through chatter. They are built through restraint. Human nature has not changed. Only the arena has. Today the arena is social groups, offices, networks, digital spaces. But the psychology is identical. The most visible man becomes the most evaluated. The most evaluated becomes the most attacked. Visibility invites scrutiny. Scrutiny invites challenge. Challenge drains energy. You think speaking often increases presence. It increases exposure. There is a reason high-level negotiators reveal little. The less information you give, the more the other side speculates. Speculation creates caution. Caution creates advantage. When people cannot fully read you, they project onto you. And projection often inflates perceived depth. The silent man is frequently overestimated. The loud man is quickly measured. Throughout history, the court jester was always visible, always entertaining, always included, but never powerful. The strategist was rarely at the center of laughter. He stood near walls, observed patterns, spoke when necessary, and when he spoke, rooms adjusted. That is selection. History selects for men who control reaction, not men who display it. Consider warfare. An army that reveals its position constantly is vulnerable. An army that moves quietly forces uncertainty. Uncertainty exhausts the opponent mentally before battle even begins. Silence is psychological warfare. When you reduce unnecessary speech, you create informational asymmetry. Others reveal more than you do. That imbalance compounds over time. You learn their insecurities, their ambitions, their alliances, their resentments, while they know almost nothing about you. This is insulation. The socially addicted man cannot tolerate that asymmetry. He wants mutual exposure, equal sharing, balanced transparency. Balanced transparency eliminates leverage. In human systems, the one who knows more holds more. History also discards the emotionally volatile. Kings removed advisors who reacted impulsively. Leaders demoted commanders who took criticism personally. Authority demands emotional containment. If your mood fluctuates based on reception, you cannot be entrusted with weight. And weight is what power carries. Visibility also breeds competition. When you shine too brightly socially, insecure men test you. Subtle jokes, challenges, disagreements, not because they hate you, but because hierarchy must recalibrate around visible energy. The silent man avoids unnecessary recalibration. He moves beneath noise. This does not mean invisibility through weakness. It means selective presence. Appear, observe, withdraw, leave before saturation. Saturation lowers mystique. Mystique increases perceived depth. Throughout history, men who mastered controlled absence built myth around their presence. When they entered rooms, attention shifted, not because they demanded it, but because they rarely distributed themselves cheaply. Scarcity magnifies gravity. If you are constantly available, you are constantly measurable. If you are constantly measurable, you are constantly rankable. And ranked men are contained men. The modern world tells you to network aggressively, to speak often, to brand yourself socially, to stay visible. But history whispers something different. The man who survives longest is the man who reveals least. Selection is ruthless. It does not reward enthusiasm. It rewards composure. It does not reward exposure. It rewards calculation. You fear being overlooked, but being overlooked is often protection during accumulation. Grow quietly. Position silently. Reveal strategically. The loud flame burns fast. The controlled ember lasts through winter. History does not select the socially active. It selects the internally sovereign. Noise is default. Control is designed. If you stop socializing impulsively, but don't replace it with strategy, you become isolated, not powerful. Withdrawal without structure turns into avoidance. Avoidance is weakness. Strategic withdrawal is positioning. There is a difference. Strategic withdrawal means you choose when to appear, how long to remain, and what version of yourself is visible. Presence becomes deliberate, not habitual. Most men enter rooms reactively. They respond to energy instead of directing it. If the room is loud, they get louder. If it's tense, they soften. If it's competitive, they perform. That is adaptation from below. Controlled presence adapts from above. You enter calibrated, shoulders relaxed, movements minimal, eyes observant, speech reduced. You do not mirror the emotional temperature of the room. You regulate your own. Emotional independence creates psychological weight. The first rule of controlled presence: speak last when possible. When you speak first, you anchor yourself. When you speak last, you adjust with information others already revealed. You lose nothing. They expose everything. The second rule: reduce unnecessary detail. Over-explaining is a subconscious plea for understanding. Understanding is a soft form of approval. High-status communication is concise. It assumes comprehension. It does not beg for it. Short sentences, clean delivery, no filler laughter. The third rule: master neutral silence. Not hostile silence, not awkward silence, neutral silence. When someone challenges you lightly to joke, a probe, a subtle test, do not rush to defend. Hold eye contact. Let the comment breathe. Respond only if response increases position. Most tests collapse when not emotionally fed. The fourth rule: exit before saturation. The longer you stay in any social environment, the more you normalize. Normalization reduces mystique. Leave while your energy is still measured. Leave before you are drained. Leave before you become casual. Scarcity compounds authority. The fifth rule: control information release. Information is leverage. If people know your next move, your frustrations, your ambitions, they can calculate you. Reveal in layers. Not because you fear betrayal, but because structure protects strategy. When someone asks about your plans, answer partially. When they ask about your emotions, answer minimally. Not evasively, precisely. Precision builds intrigue. Controlled presence also requires physical discipline. Fewer gestures, slower movements, deliberate eye contact. Fast movements signal nervous energy. Nervous energy signals social dependency. Calm pacing signals internal stability. And stability is read as strength. Here is what begins to happen when you implement this. People talk more around you. They attempt to fill your silence. They disclose extra details. They overcompensate. Because humans instinctively try to resolve asymmetry. If you are revealing less, they reveal more. That asymmetry builds quiet advantage. You will also notice discomfort from certain personalities. The climber will test you. The pleaser will try harder. The entertainer will escalate volume. The confessor will push for intimacy. Do not react aggressively. Simply remain unchanged. Consistency under social pressure forces recalibration. Eventually, the room adjusts around you instead of you adjusting around it. That is silent dominance. Strategic withdrawal does not mean disappearing permanently. It means spacing presence intentionally. Show up unpredictably. Contribute selectively. Then detach. When people cannot anticipate your rhythm, they assign you depth. Predictable men are scheduled. Unpredictable men are respected. But understand this clearly. Controlled presence is not a performance. If it becomes an act, it will fracture under pressure. It must come from genuine detachment from approval. Otherwise, tension will leak through micro-expressions. Eyes will dart. Voice will tighten. Posture will collapse subtly. Internal sovereignty precedes external command. You are not trying to intimidate. You are trying to become difficult to steer. When you can enter a room without needing reaction, speak without needing applause, and leave without needing reassurance, you have broken dependency. And dependency is what weak men negotiate with. Strategic withdrawal reduces noise. Controlled presence increases gravity. Gravity shifts rooms without effort. The final shift is not behavioral. It is surgical. You can master silence. You can regulate presence. You can withdraw strategically. But if the internal identity still craves approval, all tactics will eventually collapse. This chapter is not about improving your social skills. It is about destroying the version of you that needed them. There is a social self inside you. He wants to be included. He wants to be understood. He wants to be appreciated. He fears being overlooked. He negotiates constantly. That version was built for belonging, not sovereignty. And as long as he is alive, you will leak power under pressure. Identity governs behavior, not the other way around. If you still see yourself as someone who needs connection to feel stable, you will unconsciously sabotage strategic withdrawal. You will re-enter rooms too quickly. You will explain too much. You will soften when challenged, because the old self is protecting inclusion. To kill the social self, you must first see him clearly. Notice when you feel the urge to clarify your position. Notice when silence feels uncomfortable. Notice when you rehearse conversations in your head afterward. That is him. He is addicted to resolution. The sovereign self does not require resolution. He does not chase closure. He does not replay interactions seeking validation. He does not measure himself through others' reactions. He evaluates internally. Killing the social self requires detachment from outcome. Speak without needing agreement. Act without needing applause. Withdraw without needing pursuit. When you stop emotionally tracking how others perceive you, something destabilizing happens. You become internally referenced. Internally referenced men are dangerous. They cannot be steered through praise. They cannot be destabilized through subtle exclusion. They cannot be pressured through group emotion, because their center of gravity is internal. Most men live externally referenced lives. Their confidence rises and falls based on reception. Their identity shifts based on environment. They become different versions of themselves in different rooms. That fluidity is not adaptability. It is fragmentation. The sovereign identity is consistent across environments. Calm in small rooms. Calm in large rooms. Calm when praised. Calm when ignored. Indifference to perception creates psychological armor. But this transformation has a cost. You will lose certain connections. Some will label you distant. Others will call you changed. A few will attempt to provoke a reaction to pull you back into old patterns. Do not resist emotionally. Transformation always exposes who was benefiting from your former accessibility. When you kill the social self, you also kill the compulsion to entertain, the need to fill space, the reflex to confess, the hunger to be chosen. You begin choosing instead. Selection reverses. You decide who gains access. You decide when to engage. You decide what version of information leaves your mouth. And because you no longer radiate need, your presence becomes heavier. Heavier does not mean aggressive. It means grounded. The old identity was reactive. It responded to energy shifts instantly. The new identity absorbs energy without distortion. That absorption creates psychological pressure in others. They feel observed, measured, weighed. You do not need to announce power. Contained energy communicates it. This is the death stage. Uncomfortable, quiet, isolating at first. You may mistake it for loneliness. It is not loneliness. It is detox. You are recalibrating from external validation to internal stability. And once that recalibration locks in, something irreversible happens. You stop fearing invisibility, because invisibility is no longer rejection, it is insulation. The man who does not fear being unseen cannot be manipulated through attention, and attention is the currency most men trade themselves for. When the social self dies, sovereignty replaces it, not arrogance, not cruelty, not coldness for performance. Sovereignty, self-contained authority, selective access, unshakable composure. You are no longer trying to be liked. You are positioning to be respected, and respect follows stability, not exposure. The transformation is quiet, but once complete, you will notice something subtle. Rooms adjust faster when you enter. Conversations shorten around you. Tests decrease, because energy that cannot be moved becomes reference. You are no longer participating in the hierarchy. You are standing outside it, and from outside, you choose when to step in. You cannot be both. Accessibility feels noble. It feels generous. It feels socially intelligent. But accessibility lowers perceived value the same way oversupply lowers price. When you are always reachable, always responsive, always available, you become background. Background men are used, not respected. Power requires friction, not aggression, not hostility, friction. There must be a subtle barrier between you and others. A gate, a delay, a filter, something that communicates. Access is earned, not assumed. Most men eliminate that barrier out of fear. They respond instantly to messages. They overcommit to invitations. They rearrange schedules to avoid disappointing others. They call it reliability. Often, it is insecurity, because the fear beneath instant accessibility is simple. If I'm not available, I'll be replaced. That fear is disqualifying. Replaceable men compete for attention. Irreplaceable men ration access. Look at any hierarchy. The higher the rank, the harder the access. Not because of arrogance, but because scarcity reinforces authority. When you are too accessible, you collapse your own perceived hierarchy. People test boundaries naturally. They will push lightly. They will joke. They will request. They will probe. If resistance is never felt, they escalate. Boundaries untested are boundaries non-existent. The final cut is this: stop making yourself easy, not emotionally cold, not socially hostile, difficult to schedule, difficult to read, difficult to pressure, difficult to emotionally move. Ease creates comfort. Comfort breeds casual treatment. Casual treatment erodes respect. Power operates through calibrated distance. Distance allows evaluation. Distance preserves mystique. Distance prevents overfamiliarity. Overfamiliarity is the silent killer of authority. The man who is always joking, always explaining, always sharing becomes predictable. And predictability invites subtle dominance attempts. When people know exactly how you will react, they experiment. When they are unsure, they tread carefully. Carefulness equals respect. This is why selective presence matters. When you enter rarely, attention sharpens. When you speak sparingly, words weigh more. When you leave early, curiosity lingers. Curiosity is leverage. Most men try to hold attention through volume. The sovereign man holds it through absence. There will be consequences. Some will accuse you of being distant. Some will say you've changed. Some will attempt to provoke reactions to confirm they still affect you. Do not correct them. Explanation is a request for permission. Silence is confirmation of authority. You must accept that fewer people will feel comfortable around you. Comfort is not the goal. Position is. There is a dividing line in male hierarchy. On one side are men who seek inclusion. On the other are men who dictate terms. You cannot seek inclusion and dictate terms simultaneously. If you are emotionally dependent on being liked, you will always negotiate from beneath. The final transformation is ownership of solitude. When you are fully prepared to stand alone socially, emotionally, strategically, you remove the final leverage others hold over you. Because exclusion only works on men who fear it. Once you stop fearing exclusion, social pressure dissolves. And when social pressure dissolves, something rare appears. Unforced authority. You are not louder, not colder, not dramatic, simply unmoved. That is the elite line. Few cross it because it requires sacrificing constant validation. But on the other side of that sacrifice is clarity. You do not chase rooms. Rooms adjust to you. You do not chase approval. Approval becomes irrelevant. You do not chase status. Status stabilizes around controlled presence. Choose carefully, be accessible, and remain manageable. Or become sovereign and accept selective distance. You cannot be both.